Ladies and gentlemen, family. There comes a moment where you got to stop rehearsing your pain and start releasing your potential. A moment where you say, that version of me, the one who second-guessed her value, the one who dimmed her light so others could shine, the one who believed the lies of fear louder than the call of purpose, that version has to go. Kill that weak version of yourself. Now, don't get it twisted. Weakness doesn't mean you're not worthy. It means you've been in a place too long, a mindset too low, a room too small. You've been surviving, baby, not thriving. See that weak version? That's the one who lived off excuses. I'm not ready. It's not the right time. What if I fail? Let me tell you something. You don't need a better time. You need a better yes. God has been calling you not the version of you that plays it safe, but the warrior in you that's been silent too long. That weak version was necessary once. She kept you safe. She helped you endure, but she was never built to carry your destiny. And now the promise is pressing against the prison. You can feel it, can't you? You feel uncomfortable in the very places that used to feel like home. You're frustrated with the cycles you used to dance in. That's not dysfunction, it's divine disruption. That's heaven saying, I've got more. But you can't have it if you keep dragging that dead version of you into every new season. You've been fighting battles that aren't even yours anymore, showing up to old wars out of habit. But today, I dare you to lay that version of you down. Kill the you who settled. Kill the you who apologized for being powerful. Kill the you who said yes to everybody else and maybe to yourself. You can't pour oil into a cracked vessel and expect overflow. So let God make you whole. Let him rebuild you, not in the image of your pain, but in the reflection of your purpose. Don't kill her with guilt. Kill her with grace. Grace that says, you did what you had to do, but now I'm stepping into who I was born to be. Because resurrection only comes after something dies. So yes, let her rest, let her go, and then rise. There is a version of you that didn't know any better. A version of you that made decisions from a place of fear, insecurity, and survival. She was never evil, she was exhausted. She wasn't lazy, she was layered with burdens no one could see. That version of you, let's not demonize her, let's tell the truth about her. She was doing her best with broken tools. She showed up in rooms afraid she didn't belong, but walked in anyway. She stayed quiet to avoid confrontation. She played small so others wouldn't feel insecure. She tolerated dysfunction just to feel connection. That version, she wasn't weak because she was worthless. She was weak because she was weary. But make no mistake, that survival mode was never supposed to become your home. It was a hallway. It was a cocoon. It was a necessary holding place while you healed, while you processed, while you figured out how to breathe again after life knocked the wind out of you. But baby, you don't live in survival mode when God is calling you into revival mode. That weak version of you shows up when life threatens your hope. She's the one who tells you to just get through it. She's the one who tells you not to dream too big because disappointment hurts. She says stay here because out there feels risky. But don't confuse comfort with calling. Don't confuse survival with strategy. That weak version of you learned how to get by, but now you've got to learn how to go beyond. Survival will silence your vision. It will shrink your identity. It will make you think crumbs are a feast as long as you're not starving. But God didn't create you to nibble at life when he's prepared a whole table. There's a seat with your name on it, but survival keeps making you sit on the floor. Survival teaches you how to brace for impact, but it never teaches you how to expect abundance. And when you've spent too long just trying to survive, you'll start calling dysfunction normal and wounds personality. You'll dress up your brokenness in fashion, in filters, in fake affirmations. But the truth is, you've outgrown the weak version. She doesn't fit your new wine. She doesn't align with your anointing. She's the echo of who you had to be, but she can't echo into where you're going. And that's why you feel the tension. That's why you're frustrated. That's why you're restless. Not because something's wrong, but because something's rising. Your destiny is calling you out of hiding. Your purpose is tired of being patient. And heaven won't let you make permanent what was meant to be temporary. There was a time when your excuses made sense. A time when I'm too tired was a real barrier, when I don't know how felt like a full stop, when what if they don't accept me was enough to keep you silent in rooms you were called to speak in. And if we're being honest, those excuses didn't just sound good, they felt good. They kept you comfortable. They gave you something to hide behind. They wrapped themselves around your fear and made it look rational. They weren't just walls, they were blankets, cozy, familiar, and safe. But here's the problem, you've grown. And now those same excuses don't fit like they used to. What used to feel like protection now feels like limitation. What used to be your shield is now your cage. Because once your spirit has tasted vision, mediocrity becomes miserable. Once purpose has knocked on your door, ignoring it becomes a burden, not a break. You used to say, I'm not ready, but deep down, you know that's not truth. It's hesitation dressed up in logic. You used to say, I'm waiting on God, but sometimes God's been waiting on you. You've healed too much to keep pretending you're still broken. You've learned too much to act like you're still lost. You've prayed too hard to sit down when doors start opening. See, excuses are not just words. They are agreements with limitation, agreements with fear, agreements with every lie that told you you're not enough. And the moment you agree with the excuse, you abandon your authority. You hand over your power to something that only ever existed in your mind. And maybe that excuse used to be true. Maybe you really didn't have the resources. Maybe you really didn't have the clarity, but that was then. And now you've seen too much. You've experienced too much. You've got wisdom in your pocket and favor on your name. You've got testimonies that are proof God won't leave you stranded. So what is that excuse doing still sitting in your mouth like it belongs there? Every time you say, I can't, something inside you shrinks. Every time you whisper, maybe later, something divine gets delayed. And after a while, your spirit starts to rebel. That frustration you feel, that inner restlessness, that's not random. That's your purpose getting sick of your silence. That's your calling refusing to be buried under your comfort. There's a shift happening, a deep, undeniable awareness that the same excuses that used to hold you down have expired. They don't carry weight anymore. They don't explain your delay. They expose your resistance. And you can try to recycle them all you want, dress them up in new words, give them spiritual language, throw in a scripture to make it sound holy, but your soul knows better now. Your soul is looking at your excuses and asking, really? Still? After all that growth, after all that favor, after all those open doors? Fear will always try to find a seat at your table. It will knock like it belongs there. Show up with confidence like it pays rent. It'll whisper lies in the middle of your clarity. It'll ask you questions that have no answers just to keep you stuck. What if it all falls apart? What if they laugh? What if you're not good enough? But fear doesn't knock on empty houses. It only shows up when something powerful is trying to be born. You don't wrestle with fear because you're weak. You wrestle with it because something inside of you is waking up. And fear knows it can't survive in the same space where faith is on fire. Purpose is loud. Purpose is disruptive. Purpose makes fear nervous. So when purpose starts rising, fear starts panicking. It throws everything it has, your past, your doubts, your insecurities, your failures, just to convince you that stepping forward will cost too much. But fear and purpose can't share the same space for long. One will always have to bow. And when you start moving in purpose, when you say yes, even with shaking hands, when you show up, even when your voice trembles, when you take that first step, even while you're questioning everything, that's when fear begins to lose its grip. Fear can't sit where purpose is rising because purpose doesn't ask for permission. Purpose doesn't negotiate with insecurity. It doesn't wait until you feel fully qualified. Purpose is rude like that. It'll interrupt your plans, mess with your comfort, expose the truth, and call you higher. It demands your attention. It will not be ignored. So either you let fear sit at the head of the table and call the shots, or you stand up, take your place, and let purpose do what it came to do. See, the moment you start leaning into purpose, you realize fear was never as big as it looked. It just talked a lot. It just showed up first, but it never had the final say. Fear operates in shadows, but purpose walks in light. And once the light is on, shadows don't disappear. They just get exposed. You can feel it, can't you? That tug, that stretching, that quiet confidence underneath the chaos that says, there's more. That's not anxiety. That's purpose waking up. That's the part of you that refuses to keep living under what you were supposed to be. That's the boldness that's been waiting for you to stop shrinking. And when purpose rises like that, when it starts taking up space, reclaiming territory, pulling you out of patterns, you can't afford to give fear the microphone. Fear is always going to have something to say, but it doesn't get to lead. It doesn't get to decide. You don't have to be fearless to walk in purpose. You just have to make fear move over. You just have to stand up, even if you do it scared, because once purpose starts rising, there's no room left for fear to reign. There's a version of you that got real good at fitting into tight spaces, a version of you that learned how to tuck in your brilliance, lower your voice, and play it safe. You made yourself small because somewhere along the way, you believed small was safer. Small got approval. Small didn't rock the boat. Small didn't make people uncomfortable. But here's the truth. God didn't create you to shrink into small places. You weren't made to fit. You were made to shift atmospheres, to shift conversations, to shift the temperature in the room just by walking in it. You weren't created to blend into the background of your own life. But sometimes we shrink because we got tired of defending our shine. We got tired of explaining our calling to people who couldn't even hear God when He whispered. We let their confusion become our limitation. We let their comfort zones become our ceiling. We decided that being accepted was more important than being authentic. But the God who breathed purpose into your lungs did not design you for confinement. You were built for expansion. That's why the old places don't feel right anymore. That's why the circles that used to feel like home now feel like prison. That's why your spirit gets agitated when you try to squeeze yourself back into versions of you that no longer fit. There's an ache that comes when you're growing in a space that refuses to stretch with you. It's the kind of ache that tells you this isn't rebellion, it's release. Release from the labels, the limits, the low expectation. God didn't call you to dim your light so others can shine. This isn't a competition, it's a commission. And when God sends you, He sends you in full capacity, not half of who you are. That shrinking isn't humility, it's fear in disguise. It's doubt dressed up as meekness. Real humility doesn't deny the gift, it surrenders it back to the giver. Real humility says, God, if you gave it to me, I'm going to use it. I'm going to steward it. I'm going to let it mold. Because shrinking doesn't serve anyone, not the people around you, not the calling inside of you, and definitely not the God who formed you in His image. The world taught you to shrink to survive, but heaven is calling you to rise, to fulfill, to stretch, to stand, to show up in the fullness of your anointing without apology, because someone is waiting on the you that refuses to play small anymore. Someone is waiting on the bold, healed, free version of you to walk into that room, start that vision, speak that truth. You can feel it rising, can't you? That inner knowing that you were never meant to stay in this box. That there's more than this corner you've been hiding in. That you've outgrown the roles people gave you and the silence they expected from you. We've been taught to fear weakness, to run from it, deny it, cover it in distractions, or dress it up in perfection. Somewhere along the way, weakness got labeled as failure. Like if you don't have it all together, if you can't smile through the pain, if you break down instead of bouncing back, you're somehow less than worthy. But weakness is not failure. Weakness is part of the human experience. It's where God does His best work. It's the doorway to power, not the definition of defeat. There's a sacred kind of strength that is only born in weakness. The kind that doesn't come from applause, but from surrender. The kind that doesn't show up in your highlight reel, but in your hidden place. The midnight cries, the silent battles, the days you kept showing up, even when everything inside of you said, quit. That's not failure. That's faith in its rawest form. But as holy as weakness can be, it's not your forever. It's not where you pitch your tent. It's not your permanent residence. Weakness is a place you pass through, not a posture you stay stuck in. There is purpose in the breaking, but there's also a call to rise after it. Too many of us have made an identity out of a season. We've called it our personality, our truth, our this is just who I am, when really it was just a moment, a chapter, a valley. Not the whole story. Yes, weakness can teach you, it can humble you, it can pull you closer to God, but eventually he'll say, get up. Eventually he'll call you into strength you didn't know you had. Eventually he'll ask you to stop rehearsing the pain and start releasing the power. Because the same place that saw you crumble is the same ground he'll use to raise you. You are allowed to be weak. You are allowed to feel it all. You are allowed to say this hurts, to need rest, to not have the answers. But what you're not allowed to do is confuse that weakness with worthlessness. What you're not allowed to do is make peace with a version of yourself that no longer aligns with the promise on your life. You've got too much oil to stay in dry places, too much calling to live under the label of barely getting by, too much grace flowing through your story for it to end at I'm tired. There is a difference between resting and retreating, a difference between being honest about your struggle and building a home in it. Weakness is a signal, not a sentence. It's a place that says, God, I don't have it all, but I trust that you do. And in that space right there, strength begins to rise. Quiet at first, almost undetectable, but steady, sure, holy. It doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, you're not done, keep going, there's more. You've been quiet for too long. And I'm not just talking about your voice. I'm talking about your power, your truth. That deep, holy fire that's been sitting in your chest like it's waiting on permission to breathe. You've silenced yourself to keep the peace. You've swallowed dreams to avoid judgment. You've turned down the volume on your own calling so others wouldn't feel convicted by their lack of movement. But something inside you is starting to stir, and not just stir, roar. There's a roar inside of you, a holy sound, a breakthrough tone, and it's tired of being muzzled by fear, shame, or what people might think. That roar is your God-given authority, and it's been trying to rise through the cracks of your silence. Every time you bit your tongue when you should have spoken up. Every time you said, I'm fine when you were breaking. Every time you let doubt override your destiny. That roar waited, and now it won't wait anymore, because silence can be sacred, yes, but it can also be a trap. The enemy loves a silenced woman. A woman who's disconnected from her voice is disconnected from her power. And when you lose your voice, you lose your vision. You forget who you are. You forget what you carry. You forget that you were created to declare, not disappear. That roar inside you isn't just about sound, it's about presence. It's about showing up in the fullness of who you are unapologetically. It's about standing tall in rooms where you used to shrink. It's about praying like you believe heaven listens. It's about walking like the ground has to respond to your anointing. And let me tell you, that roar, it's not pride, it's not ego. It's not rebellion. It's the sound of a woman who's remembered she's not a mistake. She's not a fluke. She's not just making it. She's meant to be here. That roar is every no you were too afraid to say, every boundary you were scared to set, every gift you tried to downplay to make others feel comfortable, every dream you buried under logic and timelines. It's all rising now. And when purpose starts pushing through, it doesn't ask for quiet. It demands space. It demands volume. It demands you. You can't mute yourself and manifest your calling at the same time. Something's got to give. You don't have to yell to roar. But you do have to stop hiding. Stop apologizing for being too much when you were never called to be less. Stop editing your existence to fit into molds God never shaped for you. That roar was put inside of you for a reason, to break cycles, to birth new seasons, to remind darkness that you know who you are now. You've whispered long enough. You've waited long enough. You've watched other people live boldly while you question if you had the right to rise. But that roar won't let you stay quiet. It's divine. It's disruptive. It's deliverance wrapped in sound. There are parts of you that didn't make it to this season, not because you failed, but because they were never built to carry what's coming. Some versions of you had to die. The insecure version, the settling version, the people-pleasing, peace-faking, always shrinking version, the version of you that played it safe, stayed quiet, and believed survival was the goal. That version had its purpose. It kept you protected. It helped you navigate seasons where you had to make it through. But protection is not the same as purpose. God will sometimes allow the death of a version of you that you loved, one you were familiar with, one you could predict, because it stands in the way of the you he's trying to birth. There's a funeral that comes with transformation, a grieving that happens when the old you no longer fits but still feels familiar. But hear this, just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's faithful. You can't cling to who you were and still embrace who you're becoming. There's a cost to becoming, a cost to stepping into destiny. Some attitudes, habits, and mindsets had to be buried. Some relationships had to expire, not because you were being punished, but because God was pruning. He was clearing space. Because you don't step into destiny crowded by dysfunction. That version of you, the one who overexplained her worth, who begged for crumbs, who mistook comfort for calling, she had to go. And maybe you didn't even realize it was a death. Maybe it just felt like exhaustion, like everything you used to do stopped working. Like your usual way of coping didn't bring peace anymore. Like the crowd you used to run with suddenly felt noisy, heavy, distant. That wasn't you losing yourself. That was you shedding skin. That was you outgrowing patterns that no longer align with your power. Destiny doesn't live in dysfunction. And if it takes loss to unlock legacy, God will allow it. You might miss that old version sometimes. She was familiar, she was praised, she was accepted, but she wasn't free. She was managing, not thriving. She was molding, not expanding. Destiny can't live in the same house as fear, and it definitely doesn't thrive in fake. So the moment you got real, the moment you got still, the moment you whispered, God, I want more, a death started happening. And in that death, something sacred was born. This isn't about reinvention. It's about resurrection. There's something holy about burying the version of you that was built on trauma, scarcity, and survival, so the version built on truth, strength, and spirit can rise. You don't need to be her anymore. The one who tolerated too much, the one who doubted her discernment, the one who lowered her standards and called it grace. Let her rest. Mourn her if you need to, but don't resurrect her. Don't go back to who you had to be just to feel safe in a season that's now expired. The enemy doesn't need you to say no to your calling. He just needs you to say not yet. He's not always after your outright rebellion. Sometimes he's satisfied with your hesitation because delay is deceptive. It feels harmless, feels wise, feels like preparation. But if you're not careful, delay becomes a cycle, a holding pattern, a never-ending loop of when the timing is right, when I feel ready, after I fix this, once I'm healed enough. And before you know it, you've been waiting so long, you've mistaken waiting for wisdom and settled into stagnation. See, the enemy knows he can't cancel what God has ordained. He doesn't have the power to rewrite your destiny, but he'll distract you from walking in it. He'll whisper just enough fear to make you second guess, just enough logic to make obedience look irresponsible, just enough self-doubt to make you think you need more confirmation when God already gave you the green light. That's why delay is so dangerous, because it feels responsible when really it's resistance in disguise. You can't cast out the enemy if you keep agreeing with his lies. And one of the biggest lies is this: there's more time. But time doesn't wait on your confidence. Purpose doesn't pause while you get it all together. And impact doesn't wait for perfection. There are people assigned to the version of you that exists on the other side of your delay. Not the perfect you, not the polished you, just the obedient you. The one who says, I may not feel ready, but I'm moving anyway. The enemy thrives in delay because it keeps you preoccupied, keeps you managing what you should be mastering, keeps you organizing what you should be launching, keeps you praying for open doors while you ignore the ones already cracked. Delay becomes a place to hide, a comfortable excuse, a spiritual sounding way to avoid the stretching that obedience demands. But here's what you've got to know. Your delay isn't neutral, it's costly. Every day you sit on that idea, someone else sits in bondage. Every time you say maybe later to your calling, someone misses the blessing your obedience was meant to unlock. Your yes is someone else's breakthrough. Your obedience is someone else's answered prayer. It's bigger than your fear. It's heavier than your excuses. It's kingdom business. And delay is the enemy's most subtle way of shutting it down. And let's be honest, most of the time, you're not waiting on God. God is waiting on you to trust what he already said, waiting on you to stop rehearsing the worst case scenario and start walking like he's already made provision, waiting on you to remember that clarity comes with movement, not hesitation, that power flows in obedience, not perfection, that healing multiplies in action, not avoidance. Delay might feel safe, but it's suffocating your destiny. It's not just a pause. It's a plan from the pit, crafted to make you forfeit what's already yours. So now, standing here in the rubble of every lesser version of you, what will you choose? You've seen the patterns, you've felt the pull, you've heard the roar rise in your spirit begging to be unleashed. No more dressing survival up as success. No more calling fear humility. No more shrinking to fit inside rooms God called you to lead. The weak version of you, the one built on insecurity, silence, cycles, delay, and compromise, that version had an expiration date. And this is it. You don't owe anyone an apology for outgrowing what tried to cage you. You don't owe your old self a comeback tour. What you do owe is your full, undivided yes to the version of you God always intended. The bold you, the healed you, the decisive, aligned, spirit-led you. And that version doesn't whisper. She doesn't wait. She doesn't water down her worth. She wakes up the earth when she walks. She breaks generational patterns with her presence. She commands the room without needing permission. She doesn't just exist, she executes. So let today be the funeral. Bury the fear, lay the doubt to rest, hold a memorial for the you that played it safe, and then rise, clothed in fire, dripping in grace, eyes fixed on purpose, heart full of heaven, because you weren't made to survive your life, you were born to transform it. Kill that weak version of yourself and let the real you finally live.